Hello everybody and welcome to another session of Academic Research Logs. Today we are spotlighting a new and exciting research project, and I am going to be introducing the person that we've got here today. His name is Elvis, and he has won some accolades and some awards as well, and I have taken the liberty to actually go through some of those awards and list them to us. And the very first one that I wanted to tell us about is Elvis was awarded first prize for outstanding project in biomedical engineering, and he was also the winner for Study Adelaide's Awards for Academic Excellence in Postgraduate Coursework. You think that's all, but we're still going. He also was South Australia International Student of the Year for 2022. And we haven't finished. He was also nominated by the Department of the Premier and Cabinet, Government of South Australia, as a member of the First 40 cohort for 2022. What that means is that he is one of the 40 dynamic young leaders who personify the state's strength now and into the future. I would like you to give a warm welcome with me to Elvis, and he is here with us, and we're going to be discussing some of his achievements and awards today and the inspiration behind them, and I'm looking forward to hearing him chat to us. Thank you. For me, when I saw all of this, I was quite inspired, and I thought it will be something that we want to hear your story. We want you to tell us a bit about where you've come from, where you are, and what you're going to be doing in the future. So to start with, can you tell us a bit about your background? So what led to this present time? Like, where have you come from, and what led you to here?
Okay, my name is Elvis Chidie. I'm from Nigeria, Abia State to be precise, from the southeast. I used to practice as a medical doctor. I studied med school and practiced a few years in Nigeria as a doctor.
Yeah.
And I currently came to South Australia to study biomedical engineering, a master's program in biomedical engineering.
Nice.
Yeah, which is why I'm here.
That's good.
And maybe everything that came after that.
Came after that, yeah. But I think everything that's come after that, it's also a testament to the hard work, the passion, the drive that's driven you to where you are at this very point in time. So I think from all of that, I want you to go ahead now and maybe expound on a little bit in terms of what inspired you to do what you've done. If you can tell us, I think that would be a good start as well.
Yeah, like I said, I practice as a medical doctor. It's not news if you. So in resource-poor countries like Nigeria, which unfortunately is in that category,
yes.
If you visit any of the hospitals, you sometimes be very excited if you make it out alive. Not necessarily because of the lack of intelligent doctors, but because the infrastructure is not just there.
That's right.
And for some of us who got into medicine to be able to impact humanity, to help people, to save lives, it became even more frustrating for us. I remember practicing, and sometimes you just meet people who you know exactly what they need, you know what you can do to save them, but they don't have the money. And because none of the whole medical bill is subsidized, you just you play dumb. Like, you know what should be done, you just write, yeah, patient requires this, and you know they can't even afford them. Poverty level is very high. And then it became that frustrating, and for the most part, I remember several occasions where, let's say for example, somebody needs to do an X-ray, a chest X-ray, or let's say they need to do a CT scan, and anybody who knows a thing or two about medical practice, for example, if someone has, let's say, a stroke, the earlier you do a CT scan to determine what type of stroke it is, the higher the chances you're going to save the person. Yeah, and this person walks into the hospital, and you know they need a CT scan. Yep, and there's a CT scan line there. But looking at them, you know they can't afford it. But you just write it because this is evidence-based medicine, right? Yeah, patient requires CT scan to be done immediately, and you hand it over to them. Looking at them, you know they've not had anything to eat. They don't have the food, and what are you going to do? It's not subsidized for anything, and even if you pay out of your own pocket, that's just one person. There are 10 more other people waiting. How much can you pay for? So it became that frustrating for me. And this is chest X-ray or CT scan is just a tip of the iceberg. It's something as simple as malaria. Something as simple as malaria is everywhere. Of course, the gold standard is microscopy, but people can't afford it because I had one patient at one time tell me, I said, "Doc, it's cheaper to it's cheaper to buy the medication than to actually get diagnosis," which is true. What would they do? They try the simple one, the strips, which is always positive for obvious reasons, because research has shown that I'm trying not to sound medical here, but the chemical compounds that is being detected by the strip hangs around in the body for up to 3 weeks, even after malaria has gone. So if you live in a malaria endemic region, chances are you will always be positive. So the patients, they now know that. So every time they come and you say, get me a lab test for malaria. Of course, they know it's going to be positive, and they don't come back because if that's what, but you can't do anything if you don't have that test. And then what happens is that people have low regard for the test because it's always going to be positive. And so they just go off and buy the medication and treat them themselves. And sometimes it's not malaria, but you can't know. And sometimes there's always malaria and there's some other thing on top of the malaria, but you can't know what is it until you see the malaria in the cell. And that's why the gold standard is microscopy, where you go into the lab, you look at the blood cells and you see the malaria there and say, yeah, there's malaria here. That means this is malaria, not some malaria chemical that's been hanging around for 3 weeks. Yeah, but that in itself is a bit expensive because you have to get microscopists to sit there and watch those number of fields and click things and do all that other stuff. And it's expensive, so people can't afford them. They just say, hey, oh, you have a fever, you have a cough, get anti-malaria. And what happens, people abuse the drugs, and with time it gets, the malaria parasite gets resistant to it. So the drug doesn't work any longer because, of course, everybody just abuses it. And then means that one doesn't work. That means people have to invent new anti-malaria, and new drugs is expensive. And then it even makes the problem worse. That's right. So we had one that was working, but because we abused it, we now have to get another one that's more expensive. And it's a vicious cycle that keeps going. And yeah, so it was really frustrating for me because I knew most of this was because we didn't have the technical know-how, we didn't have the equipment to do them. And sometimes we even have them, but there's no one to service it. I've seen, there was one time I was supposed to assist in a surgery, but we couldn't because the C-arm of the hospital, this is a big hospital in Nigeria, it's a federal medical center, wasn't working. Yep, it wasn't working, and it needed to be...
It's amazing.
Yeah, it needed to be serviced. And the funny thing is that it needed to be serviced, and no one could service it, so they had to write to the makers of the device itself, who took, I think it took up to 3... I can't remember offhand, but I knew it was nothing less than 2 months for them to come over. And when they came over, I just out of curiosity, because I'm interested in stuff like this, I saw what the guy did. I'm not trying to belittle what he did, but it was something as simple as changing some part, which I probably thought was a fuse. But it was just broken and it wasn't out of this place. So we have all this tech that was sent to us by wonderful donors who support whatever is happening in Africa. And then you don't even have people to use them. And then if something breaks down, this is just a tip of the iceberg. Sometimes it's just, I think at one time it was a centrifuge for doing blood tests. It broke down, and the hospital didn't do any, I think it was serum urea and creatinine tests. For 3 months. We couldn't do it because nobody was there to fix it. Nobody could fix it. And what do you do? It's the best we could do is to send it to someone else who was some other place. And it was a private person, and which is even more costly because they know you. And everybody went there. So the point is, nobody could do it. The people who actually needed it couldn't afford it. And as as bad as it sounds that the government hospital didn't work, the private one is even more expensive. So if they couldn't even afford it, so the process gets so unachievable and less accessible to the people who actually needed it. So I think I took my frustration a little bit far because.
But I think something has to drive you, though.
Yeah. Because at the point, I remember every time I come back from work, I would search on the internet to see if there was any alternative way these things could be done. If there was anybody who designed some of these equipments so they could be accessible to us. We have our peculiarities. These devices were designed for places like this where there's always electricity.
That's right.
There's always technical know-how. There's always some guy who could fix it. New ones are even coming up as often as phones come up. New ones come up.
That's true.
But in Africa, it's somewhere in the rural area, somewhere remote. It takes forever to get someone to get there. The electricity is epileptic, and these things don't just work. So I was just thinking, if there was someone who was crazy enough to want to, or just design something that worked for us.
Yeah.
Because it's the frustration of the everyday doctor. You know what should be done. Of course, you studied very well.
Yeah.
And you read these textbooks, the same ones they read in the US.
Yeah.
And you know what should be done. But you can't just do them. So I was looking for them for quite a long time. And at a point, I couldn't find anything that would convince me. And I decided, I became crazy enough to try it. So I decided I decided before I even started thinking about coming over to study, I decided that if I had the opportunity, I would study to know how to make these devices. Maybe design them for places like where I come from, like Nigeria, which represents developing countries. Yeah, so that was my goal. I just thought about it and said, yep, if I have that opportunity, I will. And then one thing leads to the other. I decided to move to get a master's. Initially, was just I wanted to do a master's, which is the easiest one most doctors do, an MPH in public health, and it's probably a walk to the park for a doctor, and you probably it would be easier for you to study because it's all about medicine and all you've done.
That's true.
But it wouldn't just work for me. My mind just said, oh, if you are not the guy who is crazy enough to go into engineering and design these equipments and get them manufactured or whatever, designed, deployed or whatever that eventually gets to be used in the rural area. If you are not the guy, then who is?
That's a good question, yeah?
Yeah, it actually bugged me. And so I decided, yep, that's what I'll do. And sometimes what you don't know, it's easier if you don't know about things. It makes it, you start thinking everything is possible. And I'm glad I didn't know how difficult that would be because it made me think everything was possible. So I thought that was possible, and I remember the first time I applied for an admission to study biomedical engineering. And yep, I paid a lot of money, which was so much for me because it's in dollars, right?
Yeah.
And then it comes to your face, not rejected. And the second one was rejected, and then they were kind enough to tell me why. They said I didn't have enough background to study engineering. Like engineering is a professional course. It's something. It's almost as broad as every other one. It's as broad as medicine. This is medicine this way, and this is engineering.
That's true.
So they were right. They said I didn't have the background. Yeah, that was really that was demoralizing.
How that would
yeah. So normally, just like every other person, would be like, yeah, maybe you should go for that MPH. Of course, nobody will tell you you're not qualified for MPH.
Yes. That's Masters in Public Health.
Yeah, Masters in Public Health. But yeah, I was still crazy enough to say no. So I kept applying other places. And I found the university where I currently study, Flinders University, they had a pathway for someone who was as crazy as I was to get into engineering. but
I think that word crazy that you use it's good because a lot of changes that's happened, I think it's the passion, the drive to make a changes in it, not just, it's that restlessness.
Yes.
Which is great.
And I don't think it's just me, and I know there are a lot of people who are passionate about what they do, but because of the kind of society where we grew up, you're not so much encouraged to be crazy enough to do anything out of the ordinary.
That's
this
true.
Is me. I'm a medical doctor.
Yeah.
I could be a doctor, do a residency, and become anything I want to become.
Yeah, that's true.
And why would I do a complete detour to go into engineering? But then, if you're a person of passion, like I like to see myself as, trying to suppress that passion is more difficult than actually following it. So
Yeah.
I decided, maybe I should just keep pushing on that wall. It was just a brick wall every time I tried to apply. So when I saw this little hole that says this is designed for people who didn't study engineering but who want to get into the engineering pathway, so I decided to apply. I remember applying, and then I got the reply. Also, it hit me on my face. No, you don't have.
Again.
Yeah, you don't have the qualifications. I was like, no way. This is supposed to be my thing. This is actually designed for people like me.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And I remember the agent at that point told me, yeah, I don't know how to explain this to you, but most times when they don't want you to, when you're not qualified, this the white man, just forgive my language, the white man says in a nice way, don't push it. We can find another one. I'm like, no. And what of course he knows better, because at that point he would have gotten used to me, because I'm always the guy who says, nah, I'm going to push that wall. As long as there's a hole, they'll kind of keep digging. Yep. And I just said, leave it to me. Just send me their email. So they sent me an email. It was from Flinders. They sent me the email from Flinders that said I wasn't qualified. So I asked them, please, could you kindly explain to me which of the requirements I didn't meet?
And that's all it.
Yeah, that's
and
what many people don't realize.
Yeah,
in Nigeria, sometimes you don't ask questions because you get victimized, and
that's right. Yeah,
you get in trouble asking a lot of questions. But I was like, hey, I live in Nigeria. These guys are not going to hit me on my face. They're not going to slap me. They're not going to victimize me. They don't even know who I am.
What's the worst that can happen?
What's that could happen?
And I think that's the culture that we need to start embedding into our own communities and education system. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember they said, so they wrote, thank you, Elvis, for your we are sorry to say the outcome was not nice. I replied them and said, what exactly? There has to be something I didn't read.
Just a feedback.
Yeah, and they were kind enough to say, one, from my transcript and from my academic history, I didn't have communication skills, and I didn't have project management skills.
Okay.
I'm like, hang on, what do you mean communication skills? So yeah, I told the agent about it. They were like, yep, you see, communication skills we don't study. I'm like, oh, hang on, there has to be something there. And I remember looking at my transcript, and I looked at it's something that's simple, GST 101, use of English.
Yeah.
Actually, the full title is use of English and communication skills.
So whatever.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah,
it's there.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to this one. But for the project, of course, as a doctor, we did community health, and we had to do a project by the end of the stuff of the study.
Yeah.
So I emailed them and said, look at my transcript at page so and so. GST 101 is use of English and communication skills. I don't understand what you mean by I don't have communication skills. Look at the scheme of work. This is the curriculum.
Yeah.
Then for the project, I just pointed them to, this is a project we did for half a year. We did this project and it was completed. What do you mean I don't have project management skills? If I didn't have project management skills, how was I able to complete this? I just put it out there because, of course, they're not going to do anything to me.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? So it was the next night, because I have to stay up at night. I remember in the morning, I got an email. And then I was skeptical about reading it because I was like, oh no, it's going to hit me in the face again. I opened it and it said, thank you for your email. We have read through your transcript again, and we want to apologize for the previous email. We have seen your qualifications and we reconsidered, and now we are happy to tell you that you got the admission. Like, no way, this is good. And I just eventually forwarded it to the agent. I said, yep, this is all you have now. So I pay you good money for this stuff. Continue, please. And it was really, and I think the agent said, in my long years of doing this is the most resilient guy I've seen. I'm like, yep, you don't know how far. I have to sleep at night, right? I'm not doing this so that your work will be difficult. I have to sleep at night. This is at the back of my mind. I want to do this stuff. I want to make a change in Africa. I want to make a change in the health system. And it seems like trying to push it at the back of my mind makes me not to sleep. I want to sleep. This is what I want. And I've been able to dig this hole, and this is it. So continue from this. And the rest is history. I got the admission. which is a whole new other story, because
Tell us about the IP.
oh, how much time do you have?
So, well, I think we can break into half if we have to. You can do 2 parts. That's fine. So we don't take
Okay.
too much time.
So the first part, which is the part I tried not to think about, was all my life I've been all my academic years. I did my first degree was in applied microbiology, and then after that I went into med school and did medicine and surgery. So all of this is biological sciences, and now I am moving straight from there to another course, which is completely almost like a 180-degree turn or 360, as you may have it, which is a master's degree in biomedical engineering science, which was a pathway. So the pathway was, if you get up to a credit in your first year, then you could get into the Master of Engineering proper.
Okay.
So you do Master of Engineering Science, which in itself doesn't make you an engineer. So if you finish with it, you just get another master. It's a Master of Science, but it's not, you don't qualify as an engineer. But if you want to do engineering stuff, you probably would need more engineering skills than science skills. Both of them, but you need to be an engineer to know most of this stuff, because that's what it takes. So it was a complete turn. I used to think about body cells, body parts, medications, what to do, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, all the stuff that has to do with human beings, medicine, surgery, and now I'm thinking about calculus,
physics,
physics, further mathematics. And I remember the first day, my first day the first day I came into Flinders, apart from shedding tears for reasons I shared with you earlier.
Can you share that a bit, if you don't mind, just to share?
I don't have a problem with sharing it. I actually shedded tears, like real tears, because before I came to Flinders, I've spent, let's say, 5 years and 8 years. That's a long time in tertiary institution, because I did a bachelor's degree before I went into to do the medicine stuff. So probably I've spent more than 10 years in university. So I know how universities work, and I've been to different universities and I've seen how it works. The first day I walked into the lab here, or into the lecture hall, into the theater. What drove me to tears was I knew that a lot of people would go through all the academics in Nigeria and would never, ever come this close to devices that I found, devices you would read about in textbooks. They were there, and not just one, there were as many as there were seats. So one person gets to sit and use just one of this stuff. I remember back in the day when we were doing microbiology, there were just, I think, probably up to 20 or 30 of us, all surrounding one microscope, so we could look. And sometimes people were just like, nah, I'm not gonna.
Can't be bothered.
Yeah, it can be bothered, because it's even if you are the one who eventually looks in there, you're not gonna remember anything like when you walk out from there. But this is a lab where everything, there were oscilloscopes, all the things I've ever fantasized about, they were.
Everything was in real life.
Yes, and not just one of them, they were just as much as you can. Like if they have to admit 30 people, the 30 people would have access to 30 of this stuff and use it to do their project once. And the lecture hall was spacious. I remember, it's not, unless you went to any of the private universities, like let's say Babcock University or any of these other private ones, you know what it looks like in a lecture. The lecture halls are so cramped, everybody's sweating, and you come to this place, everything is open, there are mics everywhere, there are speakers everywhere. If you have a hearing impairment, you can even connect to it. So you're just focused about studying. How wouldn't you do well? And you know, when you list all the things I've been able to achieve, and I find people like thinking like, wow, this is, especially Caucasian friends, people who come from here like, wow, you're very intelligent. I'm like, I don't really see myself as that. If off the top of my head, if all of, let's say, Nigerian students were brought here to study and they were given these opportunities, they'll probably do even better than I did. So it's just that we don't have that opportunity, and that was why that's the part where I was like, nah, this is too much, and I would have lived the whole of my life not ever getting to see this thing. Then we wonder why we don't get cutting edge research happening in Africa.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science if you don't invest in these places, if you don't buy this equipment, if people don't use them, if it is, and it's not just that these equipments are changed every other year.
That's
Like to the current
get
one.
updated.
Yeah, it's not just one that sits there and someone keeps it in his office and locks it up, and then you have the right. No, it is there and it is changed every other year, and they give it out and whatever happens to it, but it is changed to reflect the current trend, and that's why current research and things have been discovered here, and you wonder why it's not happening in Africa. And so that was my first day, and I remember walking into the hall, into the lecture hall. I think it was a tutorial. I was still suffering with jet lag. This is my first day, right? And I think it was on the board.
Yeah.
The lecturer was writing a lot of things. This is further mathematics. We used to call it further mathemagic when we were because it's a lot of science and X. And I remember
that's true.
In secondary school, I actually did some further mathematics because I was interested in technical stuff. I thought I would be an engineer back in the day. So it was just, I was like, no way. This is just so much. Thinking about some guy who used to probably a week or two ago saw patients and prescribed and did clinical, all the clinical examination that came with it, and did all the maybe minor surgeries and assisted in all of that stuff. Coming to talk about further mathematics, the X, the Y, all the things you actually run away from. It was daunting for me. I actually went to them and said, I went to my course coordinator and explained to him, I was like, I think I made the wrong decision. I can't do this. I can't remember anything they're saying. That's everybody. You know the funny thing, all of those guys were engineers. Like this is a master's class.
This is their bread and butter.
Yeah, and they were like,
you know,
the lady was going, and it was like, I'm like, what is happening here? I'm the only guy who doesn't know what's happening.
Doesn't have an idea what's going on.
And at that point, I was like, yep, this is where I think I've pushed this just so far. It's okay to have a noble intention, but good intentions are not just good enough. I think I've made the wrong decision. I probably should retrace myself and maybe get the MPH after all. I remember when I met the lecturer, I told her, no, I can't do this. I can't remember. I understand what is, of course, I'm not exactly dumb. And I've done a little bit of it, but it's like 8, 9 years ago. I don't think I can understand this and I can remember all of this and write it down in an exam. And she told me, no. Why do you need to remember? She said, why do you need to remember what I wrote on the board? I'm like, hang on.
You're gonna test me in exam.
Yeah, you're gonna test me in exam. She says, yeah, this exam is gonna be an open book exam.
Open book exam. Even when you write your formulas in.
Yeah. Like no.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm an engineer. I'm a PhD. I don't even remember this stuff.
Remember this because why?
And she asked me, why should I remember them? A computer can remember them for me. That's not the problem. The problem is how to use this to solve the problem. Not necessarily write all these equations. You have a problem. What the customer actually cares about at the end of the day is the solution.
You provide solutions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that she tried to explain to me, no, the test is not about how much of this
you can memorize.
Yeah, you can memorize. And you don't blame me. I came from Nigerian school system. That's the idea.
Can I say Yoruba Nagberugbe? So
what does that mean?
It means that you cram. The way you cram is the way you.
Yeah.
They don't care whether you understand or not.
Yep. In fact, I've gotten penalized severally because I tried to say things my own way. Yeah, and it's
Back
not just
home,
yeah, and it's like no,
you can't.
the best guy, the guy who gets the best grades is the guy who says exactly what the lecturer said.
The textbook or
And which to me sounded stupid. Like I thought the idea was for me to understand this and put it in my own words, and like nope, it was like if you put it in your own words, but the guy who actually said it exactly like the lecturer gets the best mark. Like hang on,
do they understand what they're saying?
It looks like hey. The whole system was arranged in such a way that you're not supposed to understand things.
You're not supposed to think for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the thing. Yeah.
And it reminds me of this. This is a bit digression. This joke about the professor who was told that the plane he was about to fly on was designed by his students. Have you heard this? It's really famous.
I haven't.
Also, there's this joke about the professor everybody says Nigerian professor or whoever it was. Sorry, this is not. Oh, my dad is a professor, so
okay, so nothing against any professor.
My dad is a professor, and he's rightly a professor in his own, but this is just a joke, and it tries to explain the problem with the education system. So the professor has that, hey, professor, relax. This plane was designed by your students, so just relax and enjoy your ride. And it wasn't just the professor; there was a lot of them there. And then, as soon as they heard that, everybody left.
Well, you taught them.
Yeah, no, it wasn't just that he taught them. All of them left.
Okay.
And one remained.
Okay.
So the guy who announced it was very impressed. We're like, oh, professor, you really trust your students to see that this is really good. To think if your students design this, then you are happy to stay inside. And the professor said, nah. And says, why? Why are you still here then? He says, yeah, because the plane's never going to take off. Because I taught these students. So this
okay, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Which shows, which just says the point. And in as much as people, we try to be patriotic to not say maybe bad things about where we come from, but the reality is stark. It's before us. You read research papers, and the kind of things you research about in Nigeria. It looks like when you come here, it looks like someone like secondary school
I know. Issues.
Assignments.
Yeah,
because for example, you have to do something and you need an electron microscope. Where can you find an electron microscope in Nigeria? Probably there'll be one place, but that would just be one place, and then you probably wouldn't have access to it.
Yeah,
that's just a problem. So there's no funding into the education sector, and garbage in, garbage out. And unfortunately, we're looking for garbage in, gospel out. Nah, it never happens.
It's not gonna happen.
So that was just that. But that's how it started. The feedback from the lecturer helped me, and she was like, if you run into any problem, I came to her plain. I said, look, 2 weeks ago, I was in a clinic, supposed to be a doctor. I took this this crazy idea to come and study this because of the story I told her, which was what I'm sharing here. But I don't understand this stuff. And she was like, just hang, if you have any problem, always come to my office. He gave me my office. And then it wasn't just by word of mouth. Every time I came, I didn't understand anything. She sat down, explained it to me, and it became clearer every time. And I was like, oh, hang on, if these guys are this supportive, then I don't have any reason to step back. I just have to ask them enough questions to get all the answers I want. And the rest is history, because all the awards I got recently actually gives credence to all of that. Most of those awards were not anything most of them I didn't even know they existed. I just wanted to impact my society. So my research is on building on the designing a portable digital microscope that could be used to diagnose malaria, and just malaria as one of it. It could be used to diagnose anything, because what you have is the economy is going down, and all you get is people like me who are supposed to be doctors in my country leaving the country, and some other people, engineers, leaving the country, and then
it's a brain drain, which is happening.
Which is obvious, to say the least. And then, but the problem is still there. People are still suffering with malaria. I tell people, if the white man eats Gary, there would have been a machine that's called Gary maker. Yes, absolutely. You see, we have rice maker. You just put rice in there, pour in water, and press on.
And the rice is cooked.
Yep, you can go and sleep. You press it and you go to work. You come back, the rice is cooked and it's warm. Yes. But we've been eating Gary for many years, and it's not there. And one thing that really that's there to me, and it's a shame actually, is that many of us, we get the privilege to leave our countries and come to a better economy, or places with better facilities, and that has a good academic basis where you can do all of this. And then we keep doing a research about things that doesn't affect us back home. Because the point is, nobody's gonna solve our problems for us.
No.
And most of these problems, even if we are fortunate enough to have people like, let's say, the Bill and Melinda Gates of this world who maybe throw in money and support all of this research in Nigeria. But how much can they do? That's just one person, right? Most of our problems, we know them better.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to leave his problem to solve your own problem.
Absolutely.
I used to think there was
That's
no
just the
problem
way.
here. When I came here, I was like, hang on, these guys have so much problems that keeps them busy. And it's even a privilege when they happen to throw in any dollar on our side. Because they have all of this cancer in their society and they have to solve it.
Yes.
And it's not your right to demand anybody use their hard-earned money to
solve your
solve your problem. And I just wish that people, when they get the opportunity like we do to come in here, that they research and invest into something that would actually impact people back home. Because if we don't do it, it's never going to be done.
No.
We have an adage in my local dialect that says, "Onye nwe ikpe si agawa ikpe ma kpote ya, ikpe ahiala." If I translate in English, it means if the convicted guy tells his lawyer that when he's about to go for the court case, he should wake him up.
Okay.
Then the court will never win. He will never win the case.
Never win the
Yeah,
case.
but that's what we are doing. We are hoping that somewhere the Western world would solve our problems for us. It's quite unfortunate that would never happen. It's us that's supposed to solve our own problems. And it doesn't necessarily need to do anything. If I could do any research, why don't I just do the one that concerns me?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to study about cancer, which we still have cancer in Nigeria,
yeah,
but it's nothing compared to things like the infectious diseases we have, malaria and all that stuff. 50% of the world is at risk of malaria. This is just last year's statistics from WHO. 50% of the world.
Still a lot of people.
That is one in everybody in this world is at risk of malaria. But still it's a problem. We just had COVID the other day, and all of a sudden we almost have it. We have all the medication. Why? Because it is a problem here, and these people are solving their problem. It doesn't seem to be a lot of problem in Nigeria. So you see, even the whole world is wondering how come Africans don't have all the COVID, although they're not that vaccinated. But that is not our that is not our problem. So we have our own problem. Yes, we have our own problem, and then we come over here. And we try to solve other people's problems
when we're supposed to.
And that is not bad. Some people's problems are bad. But if you have your own problem and you don't solve it,
nobody's going to
solve it. So that was what actually drove my research. It was a thesis, which at the end of the day we got a prototype device that could do just that. So it's basically it was 3D printed for just because the idea is to create a low-cost device that a portable one, because of course you can use microscopes to do it and get people to sit down there and count the blood cells and check for malaria all day long. But that's just one person. How much people can you count in a day?
That's right.
And it's subject to all the things that let's say the guy had a bad day in the morning. Of course, he can't trust his result. So technology is getting into the medical space, and some of these things can be done by computers. Looking for malaria in blood cells is not so hard for computers to do. We have things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we have all the technology currently that can do all of that. And like I said earlier on, the African problem, we're not trying to go to the moon.
No.
It's not rocket science. It's not something that's far-fetched. What we have is problems that have been solved in the developed world many years ago. And this research lies all over there, but they're just concepts here and there in literature. I think the way forward for us would be to look at this literature, find what has been done, and take all of them,
adapt,
and create something that works for us. So the device was portable. Of course, it's a microscope. It was very portable. You can put it in a backpack and move somewhere.
And move around rural areas, all of these places.
Yes, it didn't need internet to work. It needs internet to at some point to update things, but to work basically it doesn't need internet. And it had a screen, looked like The interface looked like that of a mobile device where you can press. You don't need technical know-how. The computer
even
does all of
better.
it. Yes.
Because I think generally in Africa, the way we've taken mobile phones,
Yes.
we've taken it to another level.
Yes. Yeah. It shows it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
A kid can understand phones. So it was a very big and extensive research which my supervisors and of course the college was very proud about.
Yeah,
And
no,
I think
I
that was why I
it's
got
proud
some
work.
of these awards because
Yeah.
they were like some of the feedback I found from my supervisor was like he was plain. He said, in my long years of doing this, this is the first time I'm seeing someone do so much work and get to the results and
That's
outstanding
amazing.
results.
That's amazing.
And this requires a commendation. And he's not just the only one who says. A lot of people, I get a lot of even industry people come and look at the device
The
and
device,
give me
yeah.
insight into maybe possible commercialization and how to take it on from there. And it made me remember what my supervisor told me. He says that at the point he said, Elvis, this is not a PhD, it's a master's.
It's a master's, yeah. I mean, hearing you talk, I'm like, this has even gone way beyond the level of a master's because you're now even creating solutions.
Yes.
You know, it's gone beyond finding out a problem.
Yes. No, this is it was when I got chief engineers of different I don't want to call names here of big industries have a look at it and say all of this was when it became clear to me that my supervisor was saying the right thing. It was like, Elvis, this is not because to me, it wasn't just about academic exercise. It wasn't about. It wasn't just so I can get the best grades. Yeah, good grades are cool. It gets you maybe a job if that's what you want. But to me, it was about finding solutions. So eventually, if I do all of this and get good grades and I dump it there, the problem is still the problem.
The problem's still there. What's the point?
You get the point.
Yeah,
so if people could be, in my language, crazy enough to take the bull by its horn, and I'd like to say it this way: if someone as dumb as I was could come into an engineering field, maybe 3 years of my life, yes, and do this, then anybody can. It just shows you can. You can actually do this kind of thing. And if we don't do it, no one will do it. And they found it very noble that I would, because of course they do this and people just say, yep, do you have any research
background
yeah.
or...
No, I mean the lecturers asking, you ask the lecturers if they have any research they are currently doing, so you can key in and now run with it and eventually get some result and publish, and then you go home and the problem of Africa is still the problem of Africa. So I told them, nah, I don't want to do your research. I have a research I want to do.
That which is the important thing. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to belittle the ignorance, my ignorance at that point, because I didn't understand how big getting from a concept to a real device would be.
It's a long way.
And that played to my favor because if you don't know how big it is,
it's
a good thing. It's bliss. Like yep, I'm going head on. And he was like, no, you can just do just this little part, and it would be exactly appropriate for a master's thesis. But I wouldn't hear the list of that. I just want the device.
You just want the device.
Because the device is the reason I left all of medicine to do this. Like if I have to leave the comfort that comes with being a doctor and come into all of this, I probably should be doing it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there should be something to show for it.
Yeah.
If it's for the money, doctors get paid better than engineers.
Yeah.
If it's for nobility, people think doctors are more noble than engineers.
So
if I had to leave all of that, I probably should have. It has to be something, and then I would like, oh, you don't have to do all of this. I'm like, yeah, I know I don't have to, but I just want to do it, so that tomorrow, someone can say, this is this device, and this device, maybe let's say in 5-10 years, or however long it takes. I hope it doesn't take that long. It gets to the rural area, and malaria microscopy, which is the gold standard for malaria diagnosis, can be this way, and then. The domino effect of it is if we're able to get good diagnosis of malaria is just one part of it. There are other things that if you get a good diagnosis of malaria, most times people don't actually just have malaria. They have other things.
Other things too.
Because the signs and symptoms of malaria could be vague. It could be other things. I remember when we had a very close relative who almost died from COVID.
And they thought it was malaria.
Yeah, everyone thought it was malaria because it was something. They were having fever. It was having fever. Was getting pale, and or every other vague sign of malaria. And the test strip tested for malaria, and it was positive. It would be
positive.
Yeah, because it's been there. You live
exposure.
Yes, the mosquito is always there to bite you every time. So if we get the diagnosis right, then we could screen out all the cases that weren't malaria, and then we don't have to use all the medications that weren't supposed to be used, and then the malaria parasite doesn't get that resistant, and then it further reduces the cost eventually.
Yeah,
and malaria is just one aspect of it. It could be every other lab test. It's a microscope, and it's a smart microscope. It could be programmed to do anything. So tomorrow we could come up and say, okay, we want to install this program that it doesn't just diagnose malaria. I want the one that diagnoses maybe there's a typhoid, which is another one we always say typhoid. It's always typhoid. But all those things are just looking for chemical compounds which hang around. So if you can say, oh, this is the Salmonella typhi here, we can see it, and we can know this is
down.
Yes,
to...
and even this is there. The gold standard is there. You can't just make a typhoid diagnosis from the lab of one result. You have to be a serial result that shows that it is increasing, and in a particular rate, and you can say, yep, this is current typhoid, because if you've had typhoid and it is not active, you could probably find it in the test that just checks for whatever they're checking for in that device. But then if you microscopically look into the cell and then see it there, you can know that, yes, this is it. And so the device was quite a success, and people thought it was honorable enough to give me all of these awards, and and it keeps coming. So I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely, and I also wanted to congratulate you as well, because you are able to tell us the significant amount of work as well, because that's a lot of work that you've done, from conception of an idea to actually, like you were saying, to actually having the idea come out alive. So it is a lot of work, and well done.
Thank you.
My hat's off to you. You've done amazing. But I also wanted you to maybe enlighten us a bit. What's the way forward from here? You've done this amazing piece of work right now. What do you want to see happen from here on?
Okay, so in reality, moving from the lab to the field it's not as short as it sounds.
Yes.
And more so for medical devices, which goes through a lot of hurdles to get certified. But the rate limiting step is the prototype, the minimum viable product.
Yes.
So something that shows, yes, this is a concept, and this is the product, and it works.
Yes.
The next step is, okay, let's see how it works. Let's try it. Let's test it. Let's calibrate it. Let's run clinical trials before it eventually gets to being a product that's going to be used for diagnosis in the medical field.
Okay.
So all of that takes not just time; it takes time, resources, and and money. Hopefully, it's still my brainchild. Hopefully, at some point when everything is brought in together, when it's wrapped up when we have done some, let's say, clinical trials. Because, for example, in order to prove our concept, we needed malaria samples from blood.
Yes.
I remember we had to buy just a slide for $40 for each one. And if you know anything about machine learning, it requires a lot of samples, and if you have to buy $40 for each one and ship it, it's quite expensive. So hopefully, I'm hoping that at some point I would have to go back to Nigeria and get as much samples as I want, because it's easier to do it there, and there's a lot of malaria. Malaria is everywhere there. Here you have to actually ship it from the US and get it here and then ship it back to. It's a long walk. So hopefully we would finish it up, add the bells and whistles, finish it up and make it look like a real device. And it's I think it was talked about. I've got a lot of media attention on that. advertiser the other day,
Yes, I saw
ABC Radio,
yeah.
and a lot of them I can't even remember. But
Yeah.
yeah, the whole idea is that when
good.
when we would eventually have to move it from the lab, from the workshop, to because research is quite a wonderful thing, but until you get your stuff used by the people who are supposed to
who are
use them,
yeah,
you would
that's
never. There are
when-
some things you would never see.
That's right.
At the back of my head is a doctor who knows some things, and now an engineer has joined him. So there are some things that I may think are easy to do, and oh yeah, just do that and it works. But some other guy will be like, oh, how do I do this? So until you test it in the field, you'll probably not have some of the complaints and things you have to fine tune. And then you bring it back and fine tune those things and take it again. And then when you think everything is wonderful, then you start going to for the next step, which is testing it out, where you get the appropriate bodies to approve a clinical trial, and then you do it and have evidence-based results of how it works. And it's not the novelty. It's not that something like that have not been done. I think there was a device which we found during the literature review, and this device costs $25,000 US.
And I think that's the difference.
Yes, and ours just cost to make one of them was just $500, just barely, just a few dollars above $500. And because I was making one, if you scale it up in the economic of scale, it even becomes cheaper. But so there are these solutions. But just tell me, if a device costs $25,000
Who's going to buy
US,
it in Nigeria or in Africa?
come on.
We have to think about.
Yes. It's never going to run. I know enough to say it. Nobody's going to. Then eventually, let's say some Bill Gates guy pays for it. Of course, someone's going to take it and lock it up somewhere.
Lock it up in an office so that it doesn't, because there's no spare parts.
Exactly. And the big guys, eventually, or some rich guys are going to be using it. The very guy who actually needs it, who would benefit from it, would be somewhere in the village who will never get access to it. And let's say, I assume they even get access to it. And then he gets there, there's no electricity. Or he gets there, the guy who's supposed to get it, he's probably traveled abroad. So if we don't design things that work in our settings, because we know the settings.
Yes.
Because when we got into the engineering design, because engineering design is really a very big thing, because it's not just about getting things together. It's not about knocking things together and building things. There's a formal process of engineering design which makes sure things work and work very well. When we were doing that, the insight I was bringing into when I was talking to my my supervisors, many of them who are very vast in this field, who are professors, researchers of repute, they'll be like, "Oh, we never thought about this," because they can't think of it. They have not lived in this place. They don't know what that's.
It's not an issue.
Yes,
for them.
yes.
They'll never have to think
of course,
about. Yeah.
Electricity is electricity. Nobody thinks about. Who thinks about who carries power banks here? Because there's power points everywhere. But then if you buy a phone in Nigeria and you don't have power banks,
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you know one other funny thing, like you have phones with 4 SIMs. Nobody thinks about that here because there is one of them is going to work. We have 4 of them because
if this one's not coming through,
because their places. Yes, exactly, and that's how. And this happened. This happened in the phone industry.
Yeah.
We used to have all these expensive phones from everywhere until the Chinese ones came in and gave us everything we wanted: 4 SIMs, double SIMs, power packs.
Because it meets our needs.
Yes, our needs was that we don't have. There are places you would never get a network, and you get one network more than the others. So instead of carrying 4 phones, they built it into one. But here, it's not a problem. Nobody thinks about building. I remember coming with my Nigerian phone, and I'm like, why does it have 2 SIMs? Like, yeah, this is a modest one. My friend has one with 4 SIMs. I'm like, why?
Because
and I'm like, you don't understand.
That's what we need in our society that we live in.
Yeah, and it works. That's why you have all the technos and all the big phones now. You hardly even find the main brands in Nigeria. But these ones work. They are cheap. It doesn't. If you have an iPhone and it works perfectly well, and somebody can buy it, what's the point? So we need to actually solve our problems. And nobody's going to solve our problems for us.
I think that's the main takeaway, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, if you need a takeaway, that's the point. Nobody's going to solve our problems for us.
No.
Nobody knows our problems more than we do. And if we are fortunate enough to have these opportunities to solve these problems, to solve any problems, think we should solve ours first.
Yes,
there are more than enough people to solve other people's problems. Everybody solves their problems first.
That's
so
true.
nobody's going to solve our problems first, and until we start trying to solve our own problems, I'm sorry to say it may never get solved.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm able to do my little part. I hope people find this interesting to take the bull by the horn. It's not just, this is just one aspect of knowledge. It could be something in engineering, it could be something, it could be medicine, it could be anything, it could be dancing, it could be anything. If you have the opportunity to come to places like this and you have to research about something, why not research about your own problem?
Yeah, that will bring solution to this problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You've given us quite a lot to think about, and I really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much. So, like you've said, I think one of those main goals is bringing solutions to our own problems. Nobody's going to feed us the solutions. We have to step up and bring the solutions for ourselves. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope someone has been able to take one or two things and you're feeling inspired and encouraged like I am, and you're ready to take the bull by the horn and go for it. And let's provide practical solutions to our own problems. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you again. Some point. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.